Okay, we have a special guest in the media center right now.
Daytona, I had that.
It's Jimmie Johnson. He's our 6-time NASCAR Sprint Cup Series champion. He's our most recent winner. He got to victory lane last Saturday night at Texas Motor Speedway. Congratulations, Jimmie, on that win. And we appreciate you coming in here this afternoon. Talk about maybe your season so far, and now coming to a short track here at Bristol. Just your thoughts, and you know, based upon the win Saturday night, that's always great, I would think, to come into a race weekend on the heels of a victory.
It's always great to come back to the racetrack after a win. When I look back on the season, I think that our mile-and-a-half and restrictor plate programs, the bigger tracks, we're very competitive and very proud of where we are there. The short track stuff's been a little bit of a challenge. Phoenix was challenging for us. Martinsville, I don't think we ran long enough to really have a chance to work on our car, but we started the race and weren't as fast as we had hoped to be. It's been a fun Friday for us so far. Well, that's kind of typical for me here at Bristol. Saturday, Sunday seems to go a lot better for me once I kind of get into the rhythm of the track and get in race conditions. So, you know, I feel that we're doing good. I feel that we're stronger than we were last year. You know, the 2 wins are great to have that under our belts. Good head-to-head battles with you know, the 4-car in both situations. I feel like Vegas was going to be another really good performance for us. We had that blown tire. California, we ran much better than where we finished. Some restarts at the end kind of got the best of us. But all in all, I think we're having a good year. But we recognize that we've had a couple of high spots and then some low spots as well. And we want to get that consistency dialed in and perform on all shapes and sizes of tracks week in and week out.
Questions now for Jimmie. If you have one, raise your hand. Alan Cavanna. I saw your hand first right over your left shoulder there. Alan Cavanna.
Alan Cavanna, Fox Sports. Jimmie, you've won a lot of races, but only one here at Bristol. So do you think back at others, like in ones that got away here at Bristol, or maybe why you haven't won as many? Do you think about stuff like that?
I honestly can't say there's one that got away from me here. This has just been a tough track for me. You know, I feel like what it takes to drive here would really fit my driving style and suit me, but it just really hasn't over the years. Even when I go back to the Nationwide car, Xfinity car that I raced here, we've been a top 5 car typically, and then that one weekend we had a race-winning car and we were able to take advantage of it and get the win. So, you know, when I look at this track, I love what this track's about. I love the history of it. I love to watch races here. I've had a blast once out there. I mean, it's always fun in the car, but you know, when you have a chance to win races, it kind of spoils you. And I want to be more competitive here just because I think so much of the track. But, you know, there's some tracks that just don't fit driver styles as well as others. And, you know, 14 years later, I'm still, and then I had 2 years of Xfinity. 16 years later, I'm still trying to find what I need around here.
Go to Mike, and then we'll go to Stan. Mike, and then Stan. Matt.
Mike Henry, USA Today. You mentioned the 4-car. So far this year has been largely you and the 4-car. You think we're going to see that all season? You two guys pretty much battling, or are we going to get a broader scope?
Well, I think the mile-and-a-half stuff, you know, there's been, I think there's going to be more, yes. And it seems like at the end of at least a few of the mile-and-a-half races, it's been us in the 4. But I've seen some strength from the Penske cars. I know that my teammates at Hendrick have been strong, that 41's been strong. You know, I think the year is still a little on the early side, and I feel that more will become competitive as we get into the summer months and be a little more company up front.
Go to Stan, and then Matt. Go ahead.
Stan Creekmore with RPMTonight.com. Compare the intensity you'll feel here Sunday during the race versus other races on the circuit.
It's really weird, and a half a tenth makes all the difference in the world. If you're a half a tenth off and the guys are coming behind, it is so frustrating, so stressful. It's a very difficult point in the race car and kind of dealing with all of that, and anxiety's high. If you're half a tenth faster than the cars around you, man, it's great. You're having a blast. It's amazing how little will make a huge emotional impact or emotional difference.
Let's go to Matt right there, and then we'll go to Al.
Matt Weaver, PopularSpeed.com. Jimmie, with the additional safer barriers they've installed on the front stretch and back stretch, has that changed your entry or the way this track drives one bit?
No, it hasn't. We talked about it a lot before we got here, and the way the barriers came onto the straightaways, we had a good register of the width of the barrier and where they would kind of tie in, and I haven't seen it as a problem yet. So I think where they ended in the past, it was far enough onto the straightaways that our lines and the vision and what we're used to doing, nothing's really changed in that department. So
We'll go to Al Pierce to the right there. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jimmie, Al Pierce from Auto Week. I'm trying to get a feel for whether drivers subconsciously let a bad accident affect them going forward. Tony in particular, I mean, since the sprint car wreck in Iowa, he's just been awful. Do you have any idea what that might do to him, or what would it do to you maybe?
And when you first mentioned the question, I was thinking of a particular crash. And for me, there's been big crashes where I've made a mistake and I've thought about, what I did there and how to learn from it, and maybe flinched a few times in that situation again. There's other crashes where something broke and you hit real hard and take a nap, whatever it might be, and you just brush those off. You're like, oh, well, that's cool. I can move on. I didn't have much to do with it. A situation Tony has found himself in with the sprint car accident and the tragedy, I have no experience with that. I have no idea how that wears on you. But I have to believe, Tony, like all racers, when you get in the car, you put your helmet on, you go to work, we have that ability to forget about the outside and drive the car and do your job. Then I can only imagine what he goes through thinking about the tragedy and the loss and all that stuff. So I don't even really know how to answer it, because that's a situation I haven't been in, and God, I hope I never experience.
Go to Mike and then Brant.
Mike Hembry again. The 31 team is going to be playing with an interim crew chief for a few weeks, it appears. You've been in that spot. How is it different for the driver? I'm sure you get in such a routine with Chad. Is it just a big change, or things kind of just flow along?
The first week or two is really the toughest, trying to build confidence in whoever's leading the team. And then you get into a flow of one another, and you take for granted the things you don't need to do with a driver crew chief pairing that's long-standing. Then when that dynamic changes, you got to go through every single step and kind of build confidence in one another. So I think the first couple weeks are probably the hardest. And then you kind of get into a flow and get going. And Todd has a lot of experience, so I don't see it being a limiting factor. It's just learning the lingo and how loose, how tight, kind of those little details that you pick up in time with one another.
Go right next door to Brant, and then over here to Reed, and then Nate.
Brant James, USA Today. Is the process of focusing, staying sharp and into the race any different on a short track than if it was a longer venue? Is it harder, easier, anything of the like different?
Your focus is always there. I mean, this racetrack puts a larger physical toll on the body. When you're on a 1.5 mile track and you have the straightaways to worry about, the draft's so important. You're still very alert and aware where the car's behind you if you ran a higher line and a draft, and how to protect and block. So I think from a mental standpoint, you're still firing as often on a short track versus a big track. But physically, I think you just go through a lot more here than anywhere else. You might get some fatigue later in the race, and then sharpen, that kind of dulls the mind, and you can make some mistakes later mentally. But I think it's more physical than anything.
Let's go over to the far left to Reed, and then we'll bounce back here to Nate.
Reed Spencer with NASCAR Wire Service. With the 2 wins locked into the chase and the speed that you've shown this year so far, have you allowed the prospect of a 7th championship to creep in at this point?
No, and I don't think with this format you can until 5 to go or 2 to go at Homestead or something. It's just a different animal these days. We feel like we're one step closer to that opportunity, but once we get in the chase, there's still so many things that can go on, and the fact you got to work your way through all the elimination rounds really changes the game.
Let's go front here to Nate, and then to Chris.
Nate Ryan, NBC Sports. After the Texas one, you were fairly complimentary of the racing, and I think there was a lot of scrambling because of the different tire strategies. But during the Kentucky test Wednesday, Dale Earnhardt Jr. was saying that he felt like that the speeds in the corners are still too high on the big speedways, like 18 mile an hour faster at places like Las Vegas. Do you have any thoughts on that? Would it be better if there was more off-throttle time with the new horsepower package, if they could find a way to do that, or do you think that it's not having an impact on racing at all?
No, I agree, and I think if you polled all the drivers, they would agree that we need more off-throttle time. And you'd think, you take some horsepower away and take some downforce off the cars, that the car would be slower through the center of the turn, and it's not. It's a wild deal, and it's to a point where we need more downforce to come off the cars. It was kind of really a trade-off of power versus downforce to where we are in the 2015 package. And if they could peel off another big chunk of downforce, we would then have more off-throttle time. I think that NASCAR is dealing with quite a few issues. I believe they want to head towards a multiple race engine package, and that's why we have the reduced power and reduced gear. And now you've got car owners that are tired of rules changing every year and wanting some consistency. So I don't know where we're going to end up in 2016, but if the drivers had a vote and the drivers could have their wish, it would be more downforce off the cars to create more off-throttle time. I mean, honestly, I'd rather put the big horsepower back to this package. I mean, all the drivers feel that you have more options inside the car with more power, and the center of the corner speed would come down. Oddly enough, if we put the 900 horsepower back in the cars, we'd be slower in the center of the turn right now. It's just the inertia that you carry into the corner. All that extra speed, you got to stop it, get it to change directions, and you got to go slower to do so. We're entering the corners slower, so it's easier and more efficient, easier to maintain a speed and more efficient through the corner. So we'd love to see them throw the power back to it, but the long-term plan of a multiple engine rule, that doesn't fit it.
Chris?
Chris Knight, CatchFence.com. Jimmy, I was just wondering if you had a chance to see Jamie McMurray's Twitter this week and the digital dash that they were trying out at Kentucky, and your thoughts about moving forward with the digital dash.
Yeah, we had one in Junior's car, and I was able to sit in his car and kind of get a feel for things, and it's been a high priority for us to try to get the layout right, implement it into the 4 cars. So I'm familiar with it, and as time goes on and the teams all have an adequate allotment of the dashes, we'll be able to run them in our cars ourselves, and then I think over time they'll continue to open up options for us to use. Right now it's set up pretty basic, but I think in time they'll open up the options, and we'll have plenty to get lost, buttons to push to get lost in there. Yeah, it'll provide things to us that we've not had before. I'm not sure how far NASCAR would take it, but we'd love to have lap times in the car. You can have a page just for pit road, and then take your tack and really spread the hash marks out on the tack mark, if you will, and fine tune and nail an exact pit road speed. There's just infinite options. It just depends on what NASCAR will allow us to use and put up. Your track bar display could be on there. Right now it's on a separate little device somewhere else. So I think long term we'll end up with a lot of great functionality, but they're just going to walk us into it.
Any additional questions? Far back, right over your corner there.
Jay Pennell with
final
Fox.
question.
Jay Pennell with Fox Sports. Kind of down that same road. Do you worry that maybe with all this stuff that's coming into the cockpit, the adjustable track bar, all these different options with the new digital tack, that it's almost too distracting inside the car, that you're doing too many things and inside there?
Man, we're just driving in circles anyway, right? It's pretty easy in there. No, I don't think so. When you look at motorsports, especially four-wheel motorsports around the world, our cockpits are pretty tame compared to an F1 steering wheel or even the sports car stuff I've driven. I mean, they got more knobs and switches than I even know what to do with. So I like to see the technology come in, and I think it's relevant. I think the demographic of younger race fans, the technology-driven world that we live in, to be relevant, I think it's a good move on NASCAR's behalf to give us these tools and the upgraded technology. Yep.
Jimmy, thank you for coming in, and good luck this weekend here at Bristol.